This isn't a solution. It's not the right one.
We'll react to that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an intended, like, it will be extracted. What I'm saying is the transplantation. The externalities
How
will
can
be
you
far
take that
away.
for certain? How can you?
Because
assume
we
that?
run the
second
reason
largest
we came here, or like,
What proof do you have to assume that?
Pardon me?
What proof do you have to assume that?
Our
it's
entire
very-
Our entire economy is based. This oil has become a currency that's also
So you don't
valued in
have-
some currencies, in some countries itself. The reason you could achieve the even single bus here is because of oil.
But you're just forecasting it in the future.
I'm not
It's just a
forecasting, it's a
prediction.
reality we live on, even the transportation, the
It might not be in here, but other
Transferring
countries.
to another-
So there's 0% chance our economy is going to couple with environmental responsibility and renewable resources.
We are. This actually is our environmental method, because the scrutiny that we have, that the pipeline has gone through to provide a safe method of transporting is actually very intensive. It creates safer methods than other ones such as tank rails, shipping
Is
it.
it safe though? It's safer, but
It's safe, it's as safe as you could say a renewable source is.
There's
It's
still risks.
not safer. There is, such as, let's say, nuclear reactors, right?
Mhm.
Japan,
Mhm.
was it safe? Is it a
No.
renewable source?
No.
Do we have any other source of energy that is safe, renewable?
So
And
That's going to address transport,
I'm very
methane,
glad,
and all
I'm
that.
very glad that you brought up externalities, because I'd like to introduce you to this diagram. Now what we have here is, although this isn't as simplistic as typical externality diagram, I'm sure everyone in this room can understand that on the y-axis you have the cost and benefits, also you could measure as price. On the x-axis we have quantity produced. Now this is the long-term graph of oil extraction and transportation. So the society, now although there are some benefits to society in the short term, a few jobs will be created, but in the long term, these benefits are going to shrink because you build a pipeline, what happens to the people after that? The jobs are very short-lived. Now the societal costs are tremendous in the long term, especially when you're going down this path of increased extraction and moving toward further fossil fuel dependence. We need to be moving away from this and down a path of sustainability. And these societal costs, as I'm about to explain, are tremendous in the long term. So when you talk about health, it's not just hundreds of thousands of wildlife and ecosystems and environments that are being just dramatically eradicated by any spill that takes place, but it's also human lives that are being destroyed. It's not just cancers, but it's also many other diseases that take place from the downwind of these tar sands, and it's also the death tolls, the cancer rates, and the wildlife, and it's also when you talk about societal costs.
Where does the heavy oil that ends up being refined where?
Texas.
Texas.
Yeah.
Where does that refined
Oil. It gets exported.
where does that
being-
refined oil
Sure. Yeah.
end up?
It's being exported. So one of the myths
To whom?
to actually kind of
So when it
Caribbean,
leaves,
Jamaica's one of
when
the big
it
ones.
leaves Houston, who's buying it?
Yeah, the Caribbean. There are many islands in the Caribbean, and they're basically the Koch
So
brothers. Their
the
plan is
Jamaicans
to
are buying it from
their competition with
from some
Venezuela.
company in Houston.
They're trying to take Venezuela out of the picture because they're undercut
And
the
those
price.
profits will accrue to some big American company.
Koch brothers.
Coke. Okay, now who owns the corporations in Hardisty or in Fort McMurray? Those would be American
Trans-Canada.
companies.
That would be TransCanada. The whole pipeline is TransCanada.
TransCanada.
So this
And
is a private,
TransCanada is owned by whom?
It's
private.
it's a private entity.
Okay, but who's their shareholders are mainly who? Are they American?
No, I'm mostly Canadian.
They're mostly Canadian. So there would be a return
Canadian.
to Canadian, which
I'm not
would be a
sure.
benefit.
It would be.
I'm not entirely sure.
Which there are some
I
benefits.
mean, there are outside of the improvements.
So we're selling our oil and we're getting paid for it.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, yeah, the tar sands that are, I mean, people get work there all the time in Canada. It's already been a big
No,
economy.
but we sell our oil and TransCanada is making money and then they filter it back to the shareholders.
Correct, but
One thing I'd like to
Why
point
not?
out is that
we're selling it at a
As
low,
na-
low,
yeah,
low
As
cost to keep
mathematicians
friendship.
of
How much, what's the?
$30 a barrel. $90 currently from Venezuela.
Yeah,
What I've never understood is why can't we build a
A
refinery?
refinery? Because
Apparently they're incredibly expensive.
They
I don't understand
We
either.
don't have the
It seems to
amount
make
of people,
sense.
population to actually build refineries. So
Actually,
we do not have the labor force to actually build refineries.
And that
Actually,
seems
I have
like
a,
a
I
very,
have a,
Labor,
I called
labor
my,
will be drawn to the jobs, right?
Yeah, exactly, but if
There's
we
more
do not
resources.
have this pipeline, we will not have not only the profit.
there's a pretty simplistic answer to your question.
Yeah.
Is, my uncle owns a company in Fort McMurray. I called him, asked him that exact question. He said it's because you can build a refinery in Alberta or Canada, but our relationship with America is completely tarnished after. Well, because we're
Do we
taking
care?
all that profit from them, and we don't have them as allies
Do we
anymore.
care?
It's more of
Oh,
a
they're not gonna
it's a
be our
geopolitical decision and an economic decision.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
think
big
that-
Canadian export.
yeah.
What are the products that come out of refineries?
Sorry,
What are all the products that come out of refineries?
this
Suppose
specific
one goes to
refinery,
the refinery and then what comes out? What are the products?
just crude oil is being refined into something that we can use as combustion.
What else?
No, no,
Yeah.
No, no, refineries are, they're very specific to a certain use. So you can't use that refinery in Texas.
No, but no,
Or
just,
anything
like that.
is that the only product? Is this for one product comes out of it,
Yeah,
or are there any byproducts as well?
No, there's
Crude
there's
oil
not a
and
lot of-
gasoline as
That's correct.
yeah,
Gasoline, there's chemicals being
And
made.
the Americans
Smoke
are,
companies
We're
are-
not
Americans
gonna-
are,
They're not gonna let it happen.
Okay, answer first. Are there any byproducts? Is that the only thing that's coming out? Or
Out of the refineries itself?
from the refineries?
No,
Are you sure?
no.
Good. Right, generally what happens is you don't have processing zones where you don't have demand.
Yeah.
So if you had a refinery here and there were more than one product coming out of this refinery, then you really have to transport these to wherever the demand is.
Yeah.
And if there isn't even enough demand in Canada for the product, then it makes no sense to have the refinery here. If we are
Well,
going to ship the final
why
product
can't you
to...
refine it and then export it?
Exactly, that's what I'm trying to answer.
You don't have the demand.
That's what I'm trying to answer.
Okay.
If there isn't enough demand in Canada for the product, final product, then you don't want to have it here. So generally for many products, what happens is you really have to have the scale of production. You set up the plant wherever the demand is high.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it can serve that purpose. So even if you look at the US and Canada Auto Pact, which happened in 70s,
Yeah.
businesses shifted such that you went wherever the demand was the highest, and then you transported it wherever it was low
Yeah.
demand. So Honda started producing Accords instead of in Canada, they started producing it in the US, and then we import Accords because we don't really consume so much, just don't have the money, we buy Civics. Right? But Civic production moved it to Canada because that's
I can
where
see
the
that.
major demand is, and
Yeah.
then US imports it. So I want to know is what are the byproducts from refineries, and if after having refined the product, we are selling the final product, which is more than one, to various places, then we're increasing the transportation cost, right? Instead of having it.
That's correct.
So we don't know the answer, whether there is more than one byproduct. So if the final product is the same product and it is going to ship by the same infrastructure, then yes, it makes sense to have refineries here and to have the final product being shipped because now it's a high value good. So we're going to earn even more money, right, as Canada, because we've added more value to it. So the profits are going to be higher as well.
If there's a pipeline and there's a steady flow of rounding up to 1 million barrels a day of oil, then that's going to increase production. We're assuming because the price is a third the price. It's a third the price for American buy from Canada. If it's being supplied every day, instead of it's just going to increase production by 30% is what Greenpeace predicted and other
So you
sources.
think-
Cornwall.
So you think is your argument if we have a refinery in the US, there's going to be more production?
in the tar
If
sands
there's
in
going to be
Canada.
more use?
Well, whatever
So you want to
supply,
have
whatever
refineries-
supply
So
of
you want to
oil.
have refineries in Canada because the demand is going to be less?
I mean,
No,
with
with oil,
with
this
oil,
is
the
actually
way we
not
see
But we
oil,
just said that it would be more,
yeah, the way we see oil isn't like any other products. Is whatever the supply is, the demand will meet it. It's not, if we extract, if we cut down the boreal forests and create create crude oil, that'll be used. It's not going to just, it'll be used. and it's going to increase.
A significant portion of the demand that's coming into the States is actually being used as exports, and that's why the price is not predicted to drop. And so the demand is actually not so much in the States, but it's being exported, and they're reaping huge profits in the United States as opposed to in Canada.
If I could just change,
Okay, so now we
But
are
isn't
getting
there
to
an
the
excess
answer.
supply of shale oil?
I'm sorry, before I go on into this debate,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Jose. Are we debating?
the construction of the Keystone.
These guys are
Not
saying
not
that.
alternatives, just what the construction of it.
Just the
Construction
Keystone
pipelines?
Pipeline. It's,
Exactly.
I have a-
specifically the construction of the
So
Keystone.
now
Pipeline.
you really answered the question. What we are now saying is that if we have the refinery in the US, then we are shipping it to other countries because that's where
That goes
it's
to
being supplied.
Jamaica.
So in Canada, we don't really have the means of, because the seaports in the US and the transportation cost of sending it to the other countries from the US is much lower than it is in Canada.
Mhm.
So it makes sense profitable to have refineries in the US.
Well, it makes sense in that sense,
No.
but there's also an environmental argument that we touched upon earlier, which would be a gallop.
Is it costing the state, the government, anything to put these, I'm not talking about externalities, but is there any upfront money that the government of Canada or Alberta or Saskatchewan has to cough up?
We don't believe so. We believe that it's the oil companies that are paying for this. Because obviously they're
So what's the, sorry, I'm confused. Is there state money going into this project?
No, but it's
No.
their supports that they're doing. When they sign this off, they're directly supporting what this is, what it's
There's
about.
No, I'm asking this question. Is there, does the government of Canada have to write a check
No,
at all
No.
for this? So it's not costing the state anything except for the externalities?
Exactly. And
Which, may I add, those externalities would be.
So it's really a trade-off between a cost to society and a benefit to a private corporation.
never.
We've seen the benefits of the private corporations not go back to Fort McMurray. I mean, there's not much.
What are the costs to society?
right.
Potential environmental degradation.
Yeah, do you want to do that?
You can take the environmental degradation. I just want to mention one point about the First Nations. So in our opening statement, when we mentioned the Edbridge Northern Gateway Pipeline that had
No, we
that-
we don't care about
Yeah,
First Nations.
yeah, it's a specific question.
We don't care about First Nations.
Yeah.
I just want to know
Unless
what,
unless you can show that the marginal benefit curve for the marginals should be higher than, we should value it more than. We are assuming they are a part of the marginal benefit graph.
what are the potential
They're a
costs to the
huge part of the
environment?
cost because it's their way of life. It's their very livelihood that is.
Yes,
Yeah, well,
it's
go on.
already included. It's
Yeah, I
already
can answer
included
your
in the graph.
question.
I mean,
Sorry.
unless you
You
say
do
that if they should be valued more than other individuals, then you need to expand on that.
Do they
Otherwise,
get-
they're
Not
part
more,
of
they
this
just need to be
graph.
taken into account.
But they are, when you put them.
They're included.
I just wanted to.
Unless you assume they're not.
Yeah.
You're not assuming that.
Well, they are. They're a super citizenship.
So you want to clarify, what's your question exactly?
My question is, what are the potential costs to the environment?
Sure. There's costs in America and Canada.
Don't care about America. What
Sure.
about Canada?
Okay, Canada, we're assuming that it's going to increase production, and this is going to be bad for the environment because for every 1 barrel of crude oil that's produced, 3 barrels of water, it takes heat, energy, chemicals, and labor, and water, sorry, to create the crude oil. Because you have to extract it from sandstones and clay. So they're adding in 3 barrels of water, and it's separating from the oil. But then that water is now toxic, and it's waste. So for every 1 million barrels of oil that's being sent to America every day, that's 3 million barrels of water that's being wasted in the
Okay,
tank.
can I interrupt for a sec? CBC had a documentary last night exactly on this point
Yeah.
about the huge fear of lack of supply of water.
Yeah, it's a distributional problem, is what it is. People think that we have a surplus of water in Canada, but they're from GTA. There is, I go back there every summer, and there's bans, some more bans on water and restrictions because there's a deficit.
So what
So
we're
we have a
doing,
lot of water
so
in
what we
certain
would do
places,
is,
but
your argument is, we put in a pipeline, we therefore drill, that's not the right word, but we
Extract.
extract more crude oil,
yeah.
and therefore we misuse 3 times as much water.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it takes, to create the crude oil, it's 40% more emissions than if you had fine premium oil.
I thought
And
they
on
had to
top of
put the
that-
water back in
on-
its pristine state.
Yeah, but they can't. They actually, they're still doing the production of the tar sands, but they don't know, they haven't addressed that problem. So what they do at the present moment is they dig man-made lakes
Yeah, I
called Town
Yeah,
Barns.
yeah. Neil Young says it's a moonscape.
And then also, the other thing
How
is that
can
you're
he be wrong?
cutting down the boreal forests,
It's a rock.
the largest impact natural ecosystems in the world, the boreal forests.
Mick
Positive.
Jagger graduated from the London School of Economics, and Neil Young graduated from University
Yeah.
of Toronto.
You know what I'm saying, though?
Did Mick Jagger?
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Sorry?
How can we argue with that?
I didn't know, I heard Mick Jagger and then I lost, I
I don't
didn't.
believe that Mick Jagger graduated.
So yeah, the
Yes,
boreal
he did.
forests have
Yes,
a
he-
positive
No
carbon
way.
intake.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
That's why you should stay in economics. It's not just about economics, it's about fame and fortune.
It's about rock and roll and walk the double, so.
All right,
Did that
I
answer your
understand the
question?
argument, yeah. Okay, so we're running a bit short on time and we got way off topic, sort of way off schedule. Give us
Would
your
you
best shot on
ask
why.
a question?
I would like to hear from the affirmative side the answer to this question, which has bothered me.